Welcome, everybody, to NetApp On Air. My name is Nick Howell. Thank you for joining us here on the NetApp YouTube channel, on Twitch, and, of course, big shout-out to everybody watching in Discord. We're happy to be here. Apologize for the late start. We had some technical difficulties, but I believe we've overcome those because today is an important topic. Today is something that we've been looking forward to chatting about, frankly, since we started the show, and it was one of the reasons that we started the show is because we didn't get to talk about this at Insight last year. When we were doing the Insight sessions in Discord. So we wanted to bring it to NetApp On Air today. And that content, that topic, is BlueXP. And I've got a special guest today that is going to be joining me here in just a moment as I get things up and running here. So let's kill that music. We don't need that stuff anymore. But first, before we get into the show, if you're not in Discord yet, come join us. There's over 3,000 people in there. We've got over 100 members of staff, technical expertise, support, engineers, all kinds of good stuff. Our product managers hang out in there now. One of our VPs is hanging out in the live chat in Discord right now watching this. So come hang out. It's a good place. You'll find all kinds of technical content, get your questions answered, learn about NetApp, all of that kind of good stuff. So HTTP, or you want to go to discord.gg/NetApp. Drew, if you wouldn't mind throwing that up on the screen for everybody, I'd appreciate it. But yeah, make sure you come join us there. Follow us here, or subscribe to the channel here, and turn your notifications on YouTube. And if you're watching over on Twitch, follow us over there. We're live every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, or wherever you might be in the world. But without further ado, we've waited. I've held you long enough with technical difficulties. Let's go ahead and get our guest on the line. Let me welcome to the stream Mr. Chuck Foley. Chuck, how you doing, sir?
I am doing really good. My life is good.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So give us a little bit of background. Start at the beginning, not the beginning for me, but how'd you end up at NetApp, and how'd you find your way over here, and how'd you find your way into what we're going to talk about today with BlueXP?
You know, I've been watching NetApp for a really long time. I've been in this business longer than most of the viewers have actually been alive. I sat on my butt in the Texas Instruments data center when I was 13, 14 years old, fixing IBM 2314 removable disk packs, 5 megs stacked in, looks like a cake platter. And my dad had a company that repaired those. I was literally fixing disk packs at 13 and 14. Then I've been watching NetApp come up through the ranks over the years. As a matter of fact, in 1998, a young, excited VP of sales named Tom Mendoza came into my office and said, I got something to tell you. So you asked how I got the NetApp, and that's the genesis of the story, because a few of us had done a startup company in the world of storage consolidation and collaboration called Talon Storage. And in 2019, I approached Tom Mendoza again. Of course, he's now executive vice chairman at the time, at an event in New York, and said, hey, Tom, you came into my office 20 some odd years ago to look at a company. I have a company for you to look at. That was Talon Storage. 6 months later, NetApp acquired it. And so I decided to stay and play with the goodies that are here at NetApp.
Yeah. And that product is now, or the product then was the GFC, the Global File Cache stuff, right?
That is Global File Cache, and a key component in the Cloud Volumes Edge Cache, which is a single end-to-end, you order it and just start and go offering, which combines not only the edge caching, but the centralized cloud storage and the data protection and the infrastructure management.
Nice. Fantastic. So tell us about your role today. What do you do? How did you stumble into BlueXP? And well, let's talk about the evolution of BlueXP first. Because I think it's come through some iterations, it's come through some naming conventions, it's come through but I think the through line for the whole thing has been sort of the unicorns and rainbows hope that one day we could get to this universal control plane that I think every day we add new stuff, every day we make new changes to it, and I think that's going to be one of those iterating things. But tell me about that journey for the people that don't know.
So I will tell you that, because you mentioned the journey to a universal control plane. I've been in this industry a really long time. I've seen so many
single pane of glass dream, right?
Single pane of glass, God box, whatever you want to call it. I've seen them come and go. That's actually not what we're doing here, and I'm so glad that we're not. But what we found out is that we had a lot of really great things going on at NetApp, and you've seen us grow over the years. We've gone from file storage to file and block to object to unified file block and object, but we were doing all other things around it, from data protection and infrastructure management, and let's get a little bit into how we protect Kubernetes data. And we ended up with an environment where, honestly, if you're a NetApp customer and want to take advantage of our prodigious amounts of R&D, you might have 3, 4, 5, 7, even 12 things in front of you at any one point in time, from systems manager for your AFF systems, and storage grid manager, and Centricity for your E-series, and cloud manager for some of your cloud stuff, and cloud insights over here, and you might have some AIQ unified manager over here, and you might even have OCI somewhere else. We literally had customers say, guys, I love you and I love your stuff, but can you please get all of your different groups to work together? And that was really the impetus of this. And so what we tried to do is to use a SaaS-based delivery model, cloud-like delivery, cloud delivery, or for DarkSide's cloud-like delivery of different aligned resources and services. So how can I provision storage on-prem or in the cloud or in the different clouds, or move data between those, or apply a data protection policy that I want to go across these different environments? Or how can I figure out where I have data and how old it is and how much my storage is used or unused and what the performance and security profile is, et cetera, et cetera. That was the genesis behind BlueXP. And so you talked about the evolution. It was all those different things being brought together. Yeah. So things like Cloud Manager and System Manager and AIQ and Keystone Manager. But the real key was, how do we architect a framework with a back-end services layer that they all can come in and play nicely together and not give up what we built over the years?
And one of the things I'll throw in there, but like before you guys joined in 2019, we had spent 2 or 3 years sort of building a lot of these different concepts out, and different teams, different frameworks, different UIs, different methodologies, and things like that. So there was a back-end unification of a lot of these things as well that has happened, because all of them had their own API stacks, but now things are becoming more and more centralized, more and more standardized, and that's just going to breed really good things going forward.
Yeah, and when you talk about those back-end things, it's natural. I used to work for IBM, big company, lots of stuff. And you create a new offering, and so you have to go create the infrastructure for that, which means you create things like authentication mechanisms. Yeah. You create tenancy models. You create, as you noted, API layers. Each of them, now that we're in a SaaS model, you have to create a billing and charging and services layer. And these are all different components, and it's not uncommon. We're not the only big company in the industry that has multiple points for all that. BlueXP, I think, did a leapfrog on everybody else to say, it's not just about giving the customer, what you said, more of a single pane of glass. What it's really about is giving him a common entry point with the ability to sign on and see what my resources are, and be able to create a model in my organization, maybe that has multi layers of tenancy with role-based access, especially if I'm something like a CSP. That's really what we had in mind.
Yeah. Oh, that's good stuff. So if we wanted to show someone that was uninitiated, someone that had not worked a lot with NetApp before, maybe they tripped over their heels and stumbled into us in AWS with FSx ONTAP or something, how would you start them off with an introduction to using some of our cloud services in NetApp? What would be the best way to do that?
You're such a great straight man. So one of the things, before I show it to you, I want to make sure we make the point that we have a really, really innovative CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, that said, look, let's make it easy for people, because NetApp has tens of thousands of customers around the world, but there's millions that need to be NetApp. How do we make it easy to get into this fold? And what she introduced and drove us toward was the concept of a digital twin. And applied in this context, that's a term that's used a lot of different places. In this context, the digital twin means an external site, like an informational site, so somebody can go and learn about NetApp's BlueXP, but that is a common look and feel to the actual UI if you're using it, so that I wanted to research that, this is how it works. Or I wanted to research a next capability, and that's how it works. So one of the things we did was started a brand new site. It's called bluexp.netapp.com. And we can even show it for the people here. And I tell you that because this is how I tell people to begin to experience BlueXP. It is a site that anybody can go to and learn about stuff. You can learn about the products and the solutions and the resources. You can go into a given area and say, hey, I'm an Amazon user and I want to learn more about FSx for NetApp ONTAP, which, by the way, is Amazon creating a first-party, full-fledged native Amazon service based upon ONTAP. So what we do is we present the market all the opportunity to learn, and then if they want to actually go and try it, in the top right, you can go right to the console. And now I'm already signed in. If I was a brand new customer or a prospect or someone that wants to say, I want to figure this whole BlueXP thing out, that would have said get started. And I could have either, if I'm an existing NetApp customer, I can use my existing NetApp support services logon, or we call it the NSS account. But if you're a new customer, you say, look, I just want to go create some ONTAP volumes in the cloud in AWS to do some of my Kubernetes PVs. I just want a little bit for now. You can do that actually for free. You can register for BlueXP, create a user ID, and log on, and you will be almost right where I am here right now, and you can begin experiencing BlueXP. That's the easiest way. We've tried to make it stupidly simple.
Awesome. You mentioned one thing I think that's important to cover for a technical audience that we have here is one of the things that I love is the concept of workspaces and connectors and accounts that we have. The way that we make this, multi-tenant's not the right word, but it kind of, you can have it where you've got it segregated into different people's working spaces with, you can control the access to certain things. And you can tie it to the IAM that you might already have in AWS or your controls that you might have with your subscriptions and your folders and everything in Azure, right? It's you can create all of those connections up there in the top. Before you ever create the first resource, IT professionals always want to make sure that they keep the right people in the right places and, make sure that we like to say protect them from themselves. As a former sysadmin, that's what I would call it. But the ability to kind of draw this out and map this out with a design in all three cloud providers at the same time is huge. So that you can have different development environments, different production environments, different all of these areas. You can choose change the workspace between different regions that you're working in. I think that's one of the most undersold, underrated parts of this whole thing. Sure, the clouds are cool and the drag and drop is fun, and we're going to show everybody all of that. But for those of you that are out there designing a kind of cloud infrastructure and cloud architectures, don't sleep on how powerful that can be.
That's right. You can, as you said, this really speaks to the power of that back-end infrastructure between the authentication and the tenancy and the role-based access. So depending on who I am, I can have multiple accounts that I can have access to. I've got access to multiple accounts now, so I can switch between those accounts to figure out what resources I want to work with and what's environment. So here's one thing that's key. I might only have one account, one workspace, and I can still work with all these different environments. You see on the screen right now, not only a multi-cloud environment, because you see resources in Microsoft and Google and AWS, and I can play with those. It's also multi-vendor and multi-format. Two of those are ONTAP based, but in Amazon, it's an S3 block. That is because of that backend layer and our API layer, we have the ability to plug into the hyperscalers environments. So to your point, I can enter my credentials, my subscription for Azure, for Google, for AWS, and those resources can also become available to me here. Or true to how we build things, I can take advantage of ONTAP-based storage and some of the data services using the cloud providers console if that fits me better. It's good to have that ability because different personas in the enterprise, from an IT ops guy to a cloud ops guy to a DevOps guy to an app dev to an SRE to a SecOps and a FinOps guy. We're going to actually talk about some of those different people and what they do here. They might get different access. And you can do that either at the account level or what's called the workspace level. You can have multiple workspaces you create. Right. And you mentioned connectors. I want to touch on that because you can sign on to BlueXP, go create an account right now. It's free, and you can begin to use it. We're not going to pay your cloud bill. Okay, so you got to enter your Azure or Google or AWS information. But if you do that, there's some of the NetApp services you can use for free. I can create an instance of CVO in the cloud, a full-fledged ONTAP instance, no feature restrictions, no time restrictions. This is not a 30-day demo. Yeah. I can spin it up, use full-fledged with all the capabilities that it has for up to 500 gig. And I've had people say 500 gig. What is that worth? Well, I mean, the average Kubernetes PV is around 3 gig. So it gives you, 150 persistent volumes to play with in your app dev environment, or you could use it for dev tests, or you could use it for DR testing. There's a lot of reasons you could use that. That's free on BlueXP, as some of our other services have freemium entry points as well. So I can do that from one, or you can take this combination of account and workspace and connectors, and you can create multiple levels for different parts of the organization or different customers if you're a CSP.
Nice. You mentioned cloud service providers or solution providers. You're referring to our channel partners there that have their own businesses?
Yeah, we've got a great channel here at NetApp. Thousands of partners around the world, and they've been so integral to our success over the years. They're making a business model shift to the cloud, just as our customers are making infrastructure and technology adaptations to the cloud. And I've sat with so many of them, some great partners, and they say we need to offer new business models. We need to offer an MSP or a CSP model. We need to be able to either help customers with their services or offer services under our account in the cloud, or we want to be the cloud provider's designated partner, and we want them to be able to acquire those through us. All of those become easier when you have the kind of foundation that we have here with BlueXP.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's go over sort of we've gone over the foundations of it. Let's go over sort of the table of contents of the different products that we've folded in and how we bring all of that together under this one umbrella.
One important concept that we work with BlueXP, because you're looking at a hybrid multi-cloud world, is this thing we call the canvas. This is my working environment. Now, it's simplified here. I show you 3 different environments here. We have customers with dozens and hundreds. It'll be a graphical user interface like this that you can make bigger or smaller, or you can have it go to a tabular view, which will automatically do at a certain level if you get too much stuff on the screen. But if I go up here to the left, it shows me the kind of things that I can do. So we have a left panel navigation, a top strip, and a right panel navigation. Those are some of the key fun places to play in BlueXP. And they all serve a different purpose, but it's all about making it simplified, unified, and pretty easy. So let me say that I'm going to go up here on my canvas here, and I've already got a multi-cloud, multi-vendor environment. But what if I want to make it an on-prem hybrid environment? So I want my on-prem resources to be able to play with my cloud-based resources. So what I can do here is enter my information in terms of my credentials and my IP address for an AFF that I have sitting in my data center, and bam, like that, I have taken this from a multi-cloud to a hybrid multi-cloud environment and brought some very cool things I can do with my existing on-prem into this whole equation. One of the things that we're trying to address here is we studied our customers over the last year, and one thing was really loud and clear, which is we're using multiple clouds. Like it or not, we're hybrid cloud. 94% were hybrid cloud. Of that 94, 93% were hybrid multi-cloud. And I don't mean for SaaS like Salesforce or O365. I mean for IaaS infrastructure. They are literally running their applications in compute and storage and networking and security in these different clouds. And what they said was, I'm having to maintain different teams. I got a Google team, I got an Azure team, I got an AWS team, I got an IBM team, I got an Oracle team, or whatever it is, in addition to my on-prem team. Because look, we thought that you had your on-prem data center guys, and I have a staff to do that kind of work. When I went to the cloud, I hired my cloud team. It's the same thing when you go from Azure to Google and AWS. They're not necessarily fungible resources. We did a cloud field day last year, and one of the delegates was from one of the larger financial institutions in the US. And she said, I got 4 cloud teams. One of them got really hit by recruiters. They're down like 30%. I can't take somebody off the other cloud teams and put it on there. Different language, different skill set, different certifications, different frameworks, different tool sets.
It's like hiring a NetApp engineer to manage EMC kit. You know, well, I mean, you probably figure it out.
That would be easy. It's called backing up a truck, but we're not going to get into that right now. If you can drive a truck, you can.
Or pushing it off the dock, I should say. Yeah.
But let's make this easy. Let's say that my job is to do things like backup and recovery. I'm a storage guy, and my boss tells me, you got to be able to back up your on-prem stuff to the cloud, and in a different format. I want, different locations in different formats. Well, can you do a drag and drop? Can you literally grab the icon, and I drug the on-prem to the cloud icon there, and let me just enter my stuff here. And as long as you gave him access to the credentials that gives him access to that cloud account, I'm going to take the defaults just in the interest of time. And it'll say, okay, do you want to create a new backup policy, or do you want to select an existing? By the way, I'm an admin, so I get to create new policies. If I were just a standard operator, maybe I only get to choose from one of the existing policies that I have. It says, how many of the volumes do you want to back up? I want to back up all of them, but I also want to back up all future. Might as well get this set up right. That's it. I just set up a multi-cloud hybrid workload to protect my data from on-prem to the cloud. And I don't know, what was that?
10 seconds,
20
maybe?
seconds,
Yeah.
30 seconds with discussion. And now I'm fully protected. And even more so, I can click on that and make sure, because I can see the relationships that exist between these different environments. That's what we're trying to do, to say, let's give simplification. Let's give one place that people with I don't want to say a lower skill level, but a lower burden for learning these different frame sets.
It also lowers the entry point as well, so you don't have to have this level. There's no gatekeeping involved with a technical debt, a level of right. So the understanding the technical intricacies of setting up Veritas in 2003 was a nightmare, right? So the idea that you can literally drag and drop, what do I want to name it, which volumes do I want, or which policy do I want, which volumes do I want, next, finish, and you're done, and you're protected, and it's going up, it's getting sent up to a very cost-effective, probably IFA S3 bucket. So all of this stuff it's evolved to the point now where it's God, like you said, we don't want to say it's been dumbed down, because this really gets a lot of the headaches out of the way of having to manage this kind of stuff. An administrator can come in here, define all of those things for a junior admin or an end user to use. It's kind of like setting up policies for the first time. You got to do the work. You got to get on the whiteboard. You got to lay out the workflows of everything, and then set it up one time and deploy. And
that's really the key. Is it's not even from a senior admin to a junior operator, as much as where we think the world's going, which is giving end user access. Giving what some people call no ops. So I'm an app dev guy, or I'm a platform engineer, and I don't know anything about some of these plumbing concepts. I came into the industry after that, but I do need an environment, and I know I need a certain amount of storage available for my application, and I know that storage needs to be backed up, and I know that I probably want it replicated in 2 places, or I want to test it, and so I have moved some data from point A to point B. How can I let that happen and give self-service capability to DevOps, app dev, SecOps, FinOps, and all those people without having to come to IT to become a bottleneck? That's really what this is about. So it's not about dumbing it down as much as it's getting more done with less, and taking your IT ops and your cloud ops teams and let them concentrate on bigger return things versus provisioning resources and getting it up and running so that DevOps can be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, I want to make one other point as well. Like, you can use this without using any of the cloud stuff. You can use this to manage all of your on-prem kit and your Snr Mgr and Vault relationships and migrations of data and policies and governance and all of the stuff that you would typically do on-prem. Maybe today you're using Unified Manager, or maybe you're using ActiveIQ or something like that. Digital Advisor, tools, other tools like that we have. You can do all of that in here too before you ever, and then you can do some of the cloud stuff.
I can bring storage right into this,
absolutely,
E-Series, etc., or the different hyperscalers.
Yeah, it's an all-in-one sort of solution.
That's right. Maybe I have an environment where for dev test purposes, I want to take and create a sync relationship between my on-prem production environment, but I don't want to compromise my data. So I got some on-prem stuff that, and maybe, by the way, I want to go from on-prem NFS to, for whatever reason, SMB in the cloud. And so I tell that to turn on. I tell which volumes that I want to replicate. I give it a name. I select, there's the concept of a data broker, which I can set up a new one, or I can just select one of the ones that my company may have used before. I then have it go say, all right, you want to set up a relationship between one place and another place. What directories do you want? Give the server name. So I'm going to come up a really cool one, NetApp.com. I'm going to call this admin. No, I don't want to save those right now. Select my target share. It lets me schedule it. I can schedule this every day. I can schedule this every hour. I could schedule it every minute. I can have timeouts, notifications, determine what I want. It then will create this relationship. We're going to call this relationship Nick because he keeps all things together. This is going from my on-prem ONTAP to CVS in the cloud. That's it. It's that easy. So now
I just wanted to jump in on you right there on one thing. Guys, if you see what's on the screen right now, at the bottom you got a data broker group, and it's got 2 data brokers and 6 relationships. It's very important to understand the thing that makes this special to me, and I think it's one of the most slept on tools that we have at NetApp, is the ability to deploy additional data brokers and parallelize data moves. So if you're in a situation where you've got to move 100 terabytes quickly, a petabyte quickly, and you got to move it from some source and some destination regardless of what they are, this will orchestrate the deployment of the data brokers to compensate the how fast you need to get that data moved. So it helps overcome data gravity in the sense that you got to sit there and wait on file transfers to happen one at a time sequentially. No, this is going to parallelize things out with those multiple data brokers and manage that either a one-time move. If you're evacuating a data center and you need to dump an array to a middleman system or to the cloud, this can orchestrate that for you. And it will auto retry, and it will do all of the things that something like, some of the more traditional tools won't do. So I don't want people to sleep on that one because it's literally one of my favorite tools to use myself at NetApp to move things around.
Oh, it's stupidly simple, as you saw. It's in the process, so it will show the relationship once the data's been moved. And I have a low priority on the performance, so it won't take a lot. It may take an hour to get all the data there, but the relationship is set up, and I could give it more resource if I want. And as you said, this is a part of moving the data around. It's the data mobility aspect of BlueXP. Moving data for whatever reason, the dev test reason, or big data analysis reason, or DR reason, or training reasons, whatever. That's not the only reason we move data around, though. Sometimes we want to engage tiering. I could do the same thing. I could say I want to go from my on-prem ONTAP system that after data reaches a certain level of, it's a certain percent full, or it hasn't been used in a certain amount of time. Some of you guys have used Fabric pools. I can turn on tiering to go either to an on-prem storage grid or take it up to an object store in the cloud, AWS, Azure, Google.
Or both.
Or both, yeah. Or I could tier it to one and then copy it to another for 3-2-1 kind of purposes. I do think that we're finding a lot of our customers that didn't realize how easy it was, because not everybody has tiering. We have it in NetApp. We've had it as long as we've had Fabric pools, and we think, oh, everybody knows about this. We got so many customers that are saying, wait a minute, I'm sitting here trying to budget for more storage on-prem, CapEx. You're telling me I can probably free up 20-30% of what I already have, my high-performance all-flash arrays, because I can take data that is maybe not been touched in 2 or 3 years. I can tier that off without changing my workflow. Yeah, it's the same namespace. You don't need to say, oh, if you want that data, I have to go get it. To your system, to your applications, that data is still there. It will be a retrieval process. It will take some time to go bring it down. It's not as fast as all flash, but it gives you a simplified workflow, no refactoring. You don't have to change your application flows in order to free up space on a high performance asset by using the cloud as your backstop.
Yeah, and the word tiering can carry some negative connotations of, actual files, having to tier files off and stubbing and all of that crap that we hated from a long time ago. This is not that. This is basically the Fabric pools tech that's in ONTAP, basically taking blocks of aged blocks, chunking them together and putting them off into object storage. Like you said, whether that's in a on-prem storage grid, adjacent storage grid appliance on-prem, or whether that's up to an object store in the cloud. It's completely different than what you would traditionally know as tiering. It's so smart, it's so intelligent, it's so much faster than a traditional tier. So definitely don't automatically judge it. Look into it because it's fantastic.
Yeah, it gives a lot of capabilities to you. I mean, that's really what we're trying to do with BlueXP, is to put a lot more capabilities easily accessed and easily put to work at the fingertips of our customers. Syncing and replicating is one, tiering is another, protection, you saw how easily I did the backup restore. There's another one, because when you're talking about taking care of those customers and their data, I got to tell you, protecting their data in terms of what do I have and where is it? Right now, governance and compliance has become a huge topic for our customers. And when I'm using BlueXP as my window into my data estate, there's other services I can turn on very easily, as easily as I did there for sync and for backup. So for example, one of them is, hey, can you please map my data and tell me what I have, where? Tell me how much storage do I have and where do I have stale data or duplicate files or non-business data? Maybe I have certain file types where you say, look, this has no business in our company. We don't let people keep XYZ files, or we only allow these 6 file types. And if you create your own, you're not going to game the system because we don't want our employees using us as their own personal Netflix library. It happens. So Cloud Data Sense can give you the ability to look at and map your storage, figure out what you have where, and not only what kind of data you have and how often it's been used, but how about the sensitivity of that data? You see, if I give the data sense aspect of BlueXP visibility into my systems, could be NetApp systems, could be non-NetApp systems, could be Isilon, could be Pure, could be Nutanix, could be SharePoint, could be OneDrive. That's so many different.
It stops at the protocol level. I think that's where
right.
Right, so it only needs to know NFS, SMB, or object, or database, right? It also does stuff at that tier. So it doesn't care what stamp, what badge is on the manufacturer on the front of the device. It just wants to know where the volume is of data.
And then, since it knows where that is, I like the way you put that, stops at the protocol level, not the vendor, you can allow it to then scan your data, and you can determine things from the metadata and from the data itself. So scan the metadata from the things that I mentioned, like file type and size and age and last accessed and where it is and that kind of thing. But it will also do a deep scan of the data, looking for known tags, known content. You might want to create your custom regex patterns for you're looking for certain things. By the way, you'll see this screen refresh about every 2 minutes. That's because it's constantly updating its view of the data estate. Every couple of minutes, you can set that policy, but it will look into the data and look for certain things. Could be phrases like NetApp confidential, could be social security numbers, could be certain type of account numbers or phone numbers, or it could be certain types of documents stored in certain places like HR documents or legal documents or purchase orders. And you can then have sensitivities tagged to those. It'll tag the metadata for your classification scheme. So you might have stuff that non-sensitive, that's okay. Some is personal data like PII data, and some is sensitive, highly confidential. Where do I have that, and who has permissions to it? I will tell you that on a cloud migration aspect, I can't tell you how many customers have said, we want to move this workload to the cloud. Part of our governance is we can't move certain types of classification to the cloud.
Yeah.
So number one, I don't want to move duplicates to the cloud. I'm paying by the drink. I'm paying by the gig. I don't want to move 2 copies of anything up there, and I don't want to move anything up there that would violate a compliance, and I don't want to put it somewhere. I want to take German information that's subject to GDPR requirements and put it in a UK data center when I do my move. So help me figure this out. That's a really good use for the Cloud Data Sense, and it gives me lots of different aspects to look into the visibility of how old my data is.
I love the data age graph.
Isn't that awesome?
That is I got to say one other thing real quick too, Chuck. Before I joined NetApp originally in 2011, I come from the healthcare world, and I was the lead data center systems engineer for us as we took the company public. The amount of information that I had to go through with SOX, HIPAA, compliance auditors, and all of that stuff, I would have killed to have had something like this, because there were really no tools like this at that time. That was 15 years ago, but I would kill to have something like this today. It would make my life so. The best thing we had, I think, was for our Oracle database, and that something that was included. It would do masking in the Oracle database. That was it. We didn't have any kind of real compliance tools like this back then.
Well, what I'm showing you now isn't even so much compliance; it's governance of the data. And it's funny you mention that, because this all started with the technology that NetApp acquired for compliance. So
Cognigo, right?
I'm sorry, Cognigo, is that what you said?
Cognigo, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So it'll tell me what my compliance status is. Now that's pretty cool, but I can say, if you are thinking about SOX, HIPAA, GDPR, CCPA, then I want to know how much of my stuff is non-sensitive, how much is it personal, how much is sensitive personal. I can then go investigate any of these. I can literally look not into the file because I'm an admin. I don't get to read the file, but I can tell you how much they are and where they are and who the owner is and who has rights to it. And then you can then follow your legal investigation if you need to further from there. And it comes out of the box with different types of categories of this legal information, is it vendor information, is it HR information, etc.
There's a bit of ML logic too that can detect certain things.
That's exactly right.
And categorize them, right?
So it comes out of the box. Literally, when you start scanning with this, it will scan your data according to known compliance patterns, data types, expressions, data formats, and it'll put these in these categories based upon the AI ML that is learned over the years. In your environment, it will continue to learn, especially if you have custom rules. And you can apply that to all kinds of different applications. A good example is, what if I come in here and I'm being told that I need to create a DSAR, a data subject access report, for any of my different regulations that are making my life a pain. And I can go in here and, hold on one second. And I can say, here's a HIPAA report that I have to do. I can then click on that. It comes, I want to say, with 28 canned legally compliant reports, and it will generate that report and download it in a legally compliant format, so that, hey, look, I'm an IT guy or I'm a cloud ops guy. I may not know this stuff, but it'll come and tell me how many of my data sources and data tables have this kind of stuff, how much of it is encrypted versus unencrypted. As you know, that's a big deal in the GDPR and other compliance world. You have to take the commercially reasonable steps to protect the data, including compliance, including encryption. How long have I had them? Where are they? What volumes are they on? All the things you need to be able to say, I'm doing my job. I'm a good storage or IT ops or cloud ops guy, and I'm taking good care of our company's data. That's on
every time I see this, it feels like cheating. It feels like this, like this tool feels like cheating to me. So let me ask you, what does something like this cost? Like, if we're just talking in general, if it stops at the protocol level, how do I estimate as an end user? Is it just my total capacity of stuff that I'm going to have it scan? Is it a per gigabyte thing? Like, how do we bill for this? Because this is a crazy powerful tool.
This is, and it's not the only one we have, but yeah, it is crazy powerful. And the objective of BlueXP is to let customers get into a usage-based consumption. So it's SaaS delivered, pay for only what you use, no upfront costs. Some of the different capabilities have an entry point. So for example, the classification that you see here, I get up to 1 terabyte free for 30 days. I can say, I created a BlueXP registration for myself. That didn't cost me anything. I spun up an instance of CBO in the cloud to use for some of my Kubernetes PPs. That didn't cost me anything. And now I want to take this compliance and I want to scan one of my on-prem environments to see if this will fit for my business. I got up to 1 terabyte for 30 days for free. That didn't cost me anything. After that, then it's a matter of depending on what you commit to in terms of time span. So just like the hyperscalers, we're doing SaaS usage-based pricing, and for commitments over time, you're going to get a bigger discount. But this starts out at around 4.5 cents per gig per month of data that you're scanning and managing with it. When you compare that to what people are spending in terms of hundreds of thousands of dollars for software license tools, multiple people at multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars per year.
Yeah, per user licenses.
Yeah, per user license, but they're salaries. Remember what I said before? We're not dumbing down. What we're doing is we're using AI ops and ML to do the job that can be done by the systems, so that your team doesn't have to. Because show me an IT or cloud ops team out there that's not being asked to do more with less right now. Doesn't exist. That's a unicorn. They're all being asked to do more, and they're being told, well, you can't add people. You just need to do more. You need to give us new services, newer technologies. Our business is growing. This is a way to say, all right, I can provide world-class governance and compliance capability with legal reporting and deep investigative capabilities. And no, you don't have to go hire 3 people for that, or you don't have to pay an accounting firm to come in and do that $100,000. It's built into our system, which means it's always there. That's the cool thing. It's always there. It's always on. It's always watching.
I was just looking at that bar at the top. The current view, scanned, all working environments. There's your sort of at a glance view of like what's going. So you've scanned over 500 gigs. You've got 500,000 files scanned. You've scanned 44, I'm assuming, database tables in there, and you've found over 300,000 instances of PII. Wow.
Which you can then drill down and do whatever you want with. Matter of fact, I can go, that's what the investigation tab is all about. And I can create different investigations into different type of events, different types of data that I want to get to, different types of category and sensitivity levels that I want. You know, remember I mentioned the ones that come out of the chute: health information, resume information, criminal explanation, executables that might be living in my system. Do I know about all those executables? Do I want them there living on my storage systems, or could that be malware? This gives you the ability to drill down and find them, turn them on and turn them off, which, by the way, then goes to the next aspect of what you do with this kind of data, which is tell me how secure I am from a cyber resilience standpoint. Tell me where I might have issues. The issues could be infrastructure based, like your back level on your firmware, or you have open network ports that you shouldn't, or you have sensitive data sitting in a system that's exposed to the world. And we'll give you a score. We'll say, look, you're 56% of the way home. The good news is you're more than half. The bad news is you have some things you can do. It'll give you recommendations to take across different systems. And it'll even give you a map of how good you look right now. You know, that, and again, these are different IT shares. There's SharePoint sitting in Azure. Why not throw that in? A lot of data. There's OneDrive. Look, I got a problem here on my Isilon. Maybe I need to dig deeper into that and figure out what I need to do there. So when you have a team that's responsible for keeping your organization safe, it gives you a dashboard with recommended actions. And this is somewhere that you're going to see a whole bunch of NetApp investment coming over the next few months. This has become, for all of our customers, really important. So that means it becomes really important for us. And what we're doing is looking at cyber resilience and ransomware, not just from a ransomware, but is my data safe? Is it backed up? Is the backup encrypted? If it's a certain level, is that backup immutable so it can't be encrypted or held for ransom? And if it's even more higher level, is it immutable that I need multiple, either I need multiple admins to take an action to delete it, or maybe by policy and by law, it can't be deleted, even with multiple admins.
Right.
These are the things that we can build in here to help our customers be a lot more secure. And again, most of this, here's the great thing. This is out of the box. The system is set up to do that because it has its learning models in place. And then it continues with its AI ML engines to learn more over time in your environment. And it'll show you if you have issues like large number of sequentially encrypted files, which we all know is an indicator of a bad actor taking place.
Right.
This gives that to you. Right.
We have a tool that'll show that happening, though, don't we?
Oh yeah. So for example, in either ONTAP's anti-ransomware protection feature will action, or in my workload security capability and Cloud Insights will show it happening as well, or you can see it on your screen here.
Hey, quick questions coming in. Wanted to address those before we jump over to Insights.
Yes.
So I wanted to throw this up here. Can we manage Keystone deployments with BlueXP? Is that a thing?
This is one of my favorite things, because what we realize, so before I go there, let me tell you that the screen you're looking at here is something which is probably just as important to the SecOps team as it is to the Cloud Ops or the IT Ops team, right? They want to know what type of these events are taking place and what type of anomalies and exposures we have. The FinOps guys, they want to play in this game too. They want to know, what do you have and what are you using and where are we exposed? So what we've done is we've built into BlueXP what we call a digital wallet. Does a few things. If you guys haven't seen it before, does exactly what my wallet does. It shows me what I have. So in the digital wallet, here's all the NetApp entitlements that are currently supported that you subscribe to. I can have my CVO, my Cloud Volumes ONTAP licenses, so I can see what I have in the cloud, either node-based or capacity-based. I have my data services licenses. We looked at backup and recovery and classification and tiering. Well, these are things that I have licensed, So here are the licenses I have, and this can be either subscribed to the marketplaces, like the Azure Marketplace, the AWS, the Google, or it can be in BYOL. I negotiated a deal with NetApp. I got a great deal. They gave me a BYOL license. I loaded it into BlueXP. That is there for me to use, again, even on my hyperscaler storage resources. It'll show me where are my subscriptions, my NetApp subscriptions and the hyperscaler subscriptions that I have loaded in. Are they pay-go subscriptions? Are they BYO annual contract? It breaks it all out for me. And by the way, somebody brought up Keystone. So let's look at that. I can manage Keystone here as well. If I have Keystone entitlements that I've signed up for, then I can go here. Whoops, let me see which screen you're showing here. I can go here and take a look at these and say, what subscriptions do I have? When do they expire? If I want to work with one, so I have one here that's 100 committed and 0 consumed, and it's good until October 31st. Maybe I want to go in there and say, I want 25 terabytes of this type, and I want to submit that. It will then raise a service request to NetApp to provision that for me, so I can keep track of what I'm using and where it is at any one point in time. Beautiful. I can even, and this is one of the things that I really like about, by creating this digital wallet capability, we're kind of getting into the world of fungible currency.
Yeah.
Because I've paid
a token system of sorts, right?
It is. Let me give an example. I'm going to go in here and say, okay, I have these node-based licenses, and we have customers that negotiated. I need 10 licenses for a cloud migration project, and I think I'm going to use them for a year. What do you do if you get to the point where it's 7 months in and you're done with the migration? That's great news, right? You've done well ahead of time, but you bought these licenses for a longer period of time and you're not using them. So you might end up with unassigned licenses. I might go to one of these unassigned licenses and say, look, here's an Azure CVO license I'm not going to use anymore. Maybe I want to exchange that for classification so I can do a cloud migration project. Or maybe I want to exchange it for backup and recovery to be able to use on my on-prem systems. So
it's more skee-ball tickets than crypto tokens, you would say, right? You're walking up to the counter to get your toy, and you've got a certain number of skee-ball tickets, yeah?
The last I checked, we do not have 39 NetApp execs living in a $30 million penthouse in the Bahamas managing this. The last I checked. So yes, I don't think it has a lot to do with crypto. Not sure I'm going to go with the skee-ball route.
You can't mine tokens to fund your data center operations, your cloud operations.
Right. You have to negotiate tooth and nail with your NetApp rep. But then you can get these, and they can be on-prem ONTAP licenses that you can put here into the digital wallet. So when your FinOps team says, I need to do an inventory of what we're spending with this vendor or across 1 year, 2 years, whatever, you can see, this is what we have. This is what we're using. This is what we've committed to and have not yet spent. And again, you can, if you take a BOL, you can provision it where it's needed to, or if you get it through the hyperscaler marketplace, where we're linked in, because that back-end infrastructure layer I talked about, we're linked in at the API level with the marketplaces. I can acquire this stuff through the marketplace. It's still going to show up in my digital wallet.
Yeah, Chuck, I feel like we could spend a whole hour alone on the capabilities of the digital wallet, and I want to kind of let it evolve a little more, and then we can come back and come back to it. But the power, Richard, I hope that answered your question, by the way, about Keystone. Thank you. That was a really good question. I'm looking at this, though, and I'm going, exchange license. What can I exchange the license for? Anything? Are there any limitations, or is it just anything that's available in BlueXP? And second, is there like a conversion metric? Are there different weights to the different services, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, and let me be blunt. We're well ahead of the industry with this, but we're into our phase 1, right? And so there are limitations right now. There are certain services, which is the backup and the classification and the tiering. So I can exchange from my storage licenses like CVO, I can exchange those for some of those services. Right. I can take Keystone commitments and exchange them between on-prem in the cloud. Because every time one of these services, remember we talked about it at the first of the hour about, hey, with all these different businesses popping up in any big company like NetApp, and they create their own infrastructure and billing and authentication, et cetera, we have to make sure that we protect historically the customers that are up and running. So we have to be careful about how we make this conversion over to the new. subscription and licensing and billing services. Because of that, our phase one is to be able to exchange storage licenses, CBO licenses, for example, for the backup and the classification and the tiering. What you will see over time is we will continue to exploit that. And we're not at the point yet where you can say, hey, I know I'm going to use $10 million with NetApp, so I just put 10 million into the wallet. We're not there.
Yeah, just pure commit.
Yet.
Yeah.
But what you see here is 2 generations ahead of anybody else on the path that we believe the world is going to go, which is what I just talked about.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love this concept of I jokingly call them skee ball tickets. Being able to go up to the counter and get any prize that you want because the ticket has a similar value, right? Right. I think it's, is there, the last thing I'll ask you here real quick, is there if I'm an admin and my CIO is asking me how much are we spending with NetApp Cloud, is there kind of an at-a-glance report that I can kick out and send off either as a PDF or as a printout to the higher ups? Are we doing any kind of reporting? It's more about your
entitlements than it is, this is my my firm dollar amount. So gotcha. We're not at that one yet for what you're going to give them in this aspect, in this phase of the product. Okay. But I want to mention one other thing that we're doing, because we do understand that that's kind of where the world needs to go. We know they're getting those kind of questions. And I'll give you a picture of what we're doing. And one of the most dynamic environments the customer have are their Kubernetes-based environments. They come, they go, they're transient, they pop up, and resources are used for a very short period of time and go away and recur. It gets really hard to charge back and bill back those user communities that are doing that, the line of business, the DevOps, the platform engineering, the SRE teams, for stuff that comes and goes, because you're literally talking about minutes or hours worth of a compute instance or networking services or storage instance. So one of these things that we've done with our Kubernetes support and Cloud Insights, which comes through the observability and governance part of BlueXP, is we have the ability now that we can charge back Kubernetes usages on a dollar basis on a local currency. So instead of me having to go to the line of business and say, you used X number of hours for this VM type and Y number of hours for that VM type and this amount of storage, and then have to translate that into that cost this amount an hour and that cost that amount an hour, we can actually go to the sales department, to the marketing department, to the SRE department, to the compliance department and say, you used $8,764. Happy to give you all the detail if you want it.
And is that because each of those services have different weights and metrics of conversion units, is maybe the word you use? Yeah.
Yes. And by the way, so that's an aspect that we've implemented into Astra Control so far. Yeah. Specifically for our Kubernetes environment, it's a walk before we run kind of thing. It gives you insight as to the direction that NetApp is taking, what we're hearing from our customers, that it's just not all about the IT ops and the storage ops and the cloud ops guys anymore, but you need to start allowing the kimono to be open to the SecOps guys and the SREs and the FinOps guys. And here's the kind of questions they're asking. So these are the capabilities we're building in so that our customers can service their customers a little more easily.
Yeah, I find data science is another interesting one that does kind of what you were just describing, because it's not necessarily infrastructure people and it's not necessarily developers. It's some super hybrid of the two of them that are building applications, and they're doing a little bit of coding, but it's more scripting than coding. And like you can find these gray areas where these new SecOps was a good example, wanting to get in and see what's going on, but not necessarily build or change anything specifically. Yeah.
Right.
Well, Chuck, we're in the final minutes here. How do we want to close this out? How do we want to tie a bow on this? Is there anything we didn't get to that we really want to make sure we hit on?
So I think we hit the key things, which is you now got a really easy place to go to be able to either discover existing resources, NetApp and otherwise, and provision new ones, and apply policies to them for data protection, for data mobility, for governance and compliance, or for FinOps aspect. And you can get that all in one place, or you can carve it up to be able to allow different people in the organization to have access to different roles. The one thing that we didn't show that I would have was the ability, and if we have time,
a couple minutes,
because this speaks pretty well to what we're doing with our hyperscaler partners. Let's say that I showed you how easy it is to discover an existing ONTAP system and to make that ONTAP system play with other parts of your data landscape? What about if I said, well, I want to go into my hyperscaler environment and I want to create a brand new environment there, not just of storage, but I want to create an instance of CVO in that environment. And there's reasons that you would do CVO versus some of the first party offerings. So I'm going to call this.
So BlueXP, for people familiar, BlueXP has sort of taken over duties of what Cloud Manager used to do. Is that a fair description?
Not only what Cloud Manager used to do, and that's a great way to say it because it did, it encompassed everything that Cloud Manager did, but added more.
Yeah.
But it's doing this at an API interoperability level with the hyperscaler environment. And this, one of the reasons we built so much into this is because it speaks to that user self-service capability. So I'm setting up an instance of CVO here. CVO is not just a NetApp license. It's got to provision a VM. It's got to take, if it's, this one's in AWS, I guess. So this got to create an EC2 instance. It's got to hang EBS off of it. It's got to create volumes. It's got to join networking groups. I can have it have the ability to do that using automation so that my teams that really don't know anything about how to set up the difference between an AWS VM versus an Azure VM versus a Google VM versus a VMware ESX instance on a vSphere instance on site, they don't need to know that. Not only can it say, I want to go set that up, but you can turn on or turn off these different services that I've already showed you. And I'm going to turn them all off here just so we don't have to wait a little bit extra seconds for it to be applied. But here's really key. You'll notice you can have custom warnings come up. Say, if you're turning this off, well, you better back it up some other way. This user drift, the reason those were on is our policy in NetApp is that when you create an instance, it needs to have that. So if you're allowing your platform engineers and your SREs and your DevOps team or your data scientists the ability to use BlueXP to create instances in the cloud themselves, you can have their certain policies about what ought to be turned on. You can either hard enforce it or soft enforce it. This is a soft enforcement, right? It recommends it, but it's actually capturing that user drift. So you as an IT manager or a cloud ops manager or VP of infrastructure knows, am I having deviation from policy on terms of data protection and who's doing it? That's really key. By the way, at NetApp, we get a sanitized view of that. We don't know who did what. We just know across our customer base, this percent of people are or are not using these different services that are part of policies.
Yeah, and that's 90% of SOX compliance right there in a nutshell, the way you just said
that's
it.
Right.
Are you following your own rules that you've set and you told us you were going to follow? No? Oh, okay, well, you're in violation then, and here's some fines, and we'll be back in a month to make sure that you've updated them. They're like, ah!
And you can prove it.
Yeah.
You've got the drift reports to prove it.
Right.
And so I can then say, set up the key. I can say, remember, I've made a big point about the freemium capability of CVO. Might as well take a free instance here. Since it's free, maybe I'm using this for DR purposes. Notice that it has different templates for pre-configured configurations. A data scientist, what app dev people tend to do is take the biggest and fastest of everything they get their hands on, because sometimes they have unlimited budgets, but that maybe not the best reality. I can have different configurations for different workloads. And what you'll notice, this one here is a certain type of VM with HDDs. This one here is a much faster with performance SSD with a much bigger system with more memory. So I can have these pre-configured templates, if you will, so that nobody needs to know a thing about how to set these things up and which VM to take, and is an M4X large in Amazon.
What even
or
is that?
ES2B3. That's right. I simply tell it, yes, I want to create a volume. I can tell it what kind of volume. I have my tiering turned on. It then says, all right, this is what you're telling me you want me to set up, which is an EBS instance with hard disk storage. It's going to be using an M5.2 X large, 500 gig. You didn't use protection. That's it. I'm done. I just went and set up a VM, hung disk, put it in my networking environment, did it according to my company's policies to do a given workload, and now it's available for me to use. By the way, real world, the hyperscalers, depending on the VM and the configuration, can take 17 minutes to 52 minutes to get the actual resource provision.
Right.
Smaller is easier, but as a user, I'm done. And so as a data scientist or a DevOps guy, maybe that's where I say, I want to now replicate and copy data over from my on-prem, or I want to go from one cloud to another cloud for the same type of use cases.
Like you said earlier, maybe you're doing as a data scientist, maybe you're doing some training, right? Maybe you're doing some kind of stuff like that, and you just want to move a copy of your working set of your data up there away from production to do some modeling, right? That's absolutely a perfect use case for it. You're probably going to need more than 500 gigs.
So the objective here, make it easier to work with NetApp by having a place I can go to use all the different services. Number two, put AI and ML and automation into those services to make it easier to turn on. Number three, put in some governors that I can say when they need to be used or when they should be used or when it's optimal. Number four, give me the range of services from protection to governance to compliance to health and infrastructure monitoring to FinOps, and wrap it up on one nice, neat little package that you don't need to have four PhDs to do this. I can do this if I'm fairly good.
Yep. Real quick, I wanted to pull a question up here. Can you connect your on-prem systems to BlueXP and then force them to always log in a way of federating all of the systems with one IDP, so with MFA, for example?
So yes to the first part. You can certainly connect your on-prem systems to BlueXP, and I'm assuming you mean on-prem NetApp systems like AFF, FAS, Storage Grid, E-Series, etc. Yes, I can do that. You can support all those here through a pretty either a slimmed down interface, which lets me go. We call that the working environment for the given instance. So it's a summary where I could do basic high level stuff, or I can go to an advanced view, which you would know as System Manager, and then I can go into System Manager for AFF or Storage Grid Manager or Centricity, etc., and go deeply into those environments.
Does that look familiar, OG?
You have that through here. I don't have a force capability built into BlueXP. You can configure them and get them here, but you don't go into BlueXP and say this is the only way to get here. With 9.12.1 and beyond, BlueXP access is the default, but you would have to take your own steps to disable access to Systems Manager directly from your users. Yeah.
I think the idea there is sound, though. I think what he's getting at is if you've got junior admins or you've got some interdepartmental users that need access to some of the things that you were going over, but maybe not the ability to stand up and manage the individual pieces of infrastructure. Like, you can get in here and use the resources, but this can be their portal. This can be their way to get into and authenticate and have one place that's federated that can do that. I think that's a fantastic idea. That's something that hadn't even crossed my mind as something have that be the ultimate front end for your company. Yeah.
Makes it a lot easier.
With that in mind, we had another question come in real quick. With that in mind, would BlueXP login be via API at that point?
So number one, it does use a RESTful API to communicate to your individual systems. Like when I go into BlueXP and I discover it and I use my credentials, the credentials are federated. So yes, I am using the API then to access the Systems Manager on, in this case, the AFF. My initial login to BlueXP, however, is through bluexp.netapp.com, as I showed you, and you can do that either with a NetApp BlueXP account or with an NSS account.
Right.
But I'm coming in through here. So if the question was, can I use RESTful API to access BlueXP from something else without going to BlueXP? That's not the capability, but the capability is through the RESTful API, it can give you access into the embedded Systems Manager and the utilities on your boxes.
You got to get a token from somewhere is the point.
Yeah.
to get in.
You mentioned connectors.
Yeah.
Earlier.
Same thing.
And that's a great I can do things without even having a connector. I can do things based upon the authentication, which is see the box and do high level, very basic high level functions as I showed you on the introductory working environment menu. But to go into Systems Manager, I would need a connector. And connectors are a pretty standard part of IT architecture. Azure has over 900 connectors to take advantage of their services. If you want to use AWS Glue to bring a single view of your AWS environment, you're using connectors. Splunk uses connector. Virtually everybody that's of any size in the industry uses connectors as a way to securely and scalably and with scale allow different systems
scalably.
scalably. I was going to say that, and then I realized halfway through it's not.
I think we knew what you meant.
But those connectors, however, can be deployed either on-prem or in your cloud account. You don't need a connector for every environment, but you may choose to have one. So I can have my connector, if I sign into BlueXP and I'm using, let's say, Azure stuff is the first stop on my journey, and I create a connector in Azure because I want to do some advanced functions up there, I can discover and then use my BlueXP environment. That connector will manage the communications between my internal domain and my Azure domain. So I don't have to have a connector everywhere.
Beautiful. That's fantastic. Well, Chuck, any final thoughts here before we get out of here? Anything you want to leave the audience and the fam with for where BlueXP goes from here? Don't tell all the secrets, but is there any little carrots you can dangle out there for anybody that's still on the fence?
Right now, we're really focused on how to continue to crank down on the security challenges our customers are facing. And we have different pieces throughout the NetApp landscape. Cloud Insights with its workload security capabilities, with its ability to look at and see non-NetApp storage. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of pure Nutanix systems, for example, that are under management by Cloud Insights, so that our customers can know where my systems are, what's their performance and throughput, what's their capacity, am I facing a problem, as well as they do with their NetApp system. So I think what you're going to see is heterogeneous environments. Let's concentrate on where we can bring things to the table for cyber resiliency. You might see some things coming out later this month in terms of what are we doing for cyber resiliency. We just last in February released a whole suite of portfolio like the NetApp Advanced program. I think that has real legs. Pay attention to that. I think that's where you're going to see we're going.
Yeah, I think, speaking of that, I think what we did with the A700 and the A900 was sort of a primer pilot of that, and where we were doing this sort of ongoing chassis with controller upgrades and things like that. I think you're going to see more and more of that in the coming years from us as far as that stuff goes.
And the C-Series, which we're excited about.
The C-Series, we had Mr. Jeff Baxter. Hi, Jeff. We had Jeff Baxter, and we had Scott Bell, and we had Chris Luth on launch day doing a stream right here on the channel.
How can I follow those guys? If you would have told me that, I'd have never shown up. They're way too good to follow.
We brought the heavies in for that launch, man. Absolutely, definitely for our platforms team and hardware team. So shout out to those guys as always. And Chuck, thank you very much. Apologies for the technical hurdles at the beginning. Sorry we got a little bit of a late start, guys, but thank you. This has been fantastic, and I think people, whether they were joined us live or watching it on demand later, are going to get a lot of value out of this. So I know I certainly did. Thanks for letting us chat with your people there, Nick. I know these are your people. This is your tribe, so thank you. Oh, these are NetApp's people, not mine. Not mine. Thank you, Chuck. Have a great day, man. Thanks. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us today. Again, apologize for the late start. Had a little bit of hurdle there, but you guys are probably watching this on demand anyway. So make sure you come and join us in Discord. As you see scrolling across the screen there, you can go to netappdiscord.com, neat little landing page and a join button, or you can just go straight to discord.gg/netapp if you know what you're doing with Discord. That is our verified community, our verified presence out there. We've got tons of forum channels. We've got hundreds of live staff and support personnel in there answering questions every single day. If you're looking for the pub or any of the places for our open source contributions, we've got a full DevNet set of forums in there as well to talk about Ansible, Terraform, PowerShell, any of that stuff, or just the ONTAP API if you have questions around that. But discord.gg/netapp or netappdiscord.com to head over there. And of course, do all the things you already know how to do on social. Subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. Make sure you got your notifications turned on, or follow us over on Twitch if you're watching over there. But we are live every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. But until next time, take care.